Imagine opening up a newspaper to find a cryptic clue to a mystery that you have to solve. On the page, you notice a colorful yet simplistic drawing of a door. And behind the slightly opened door, you find a small table, a lamp, and a vase, all drawn upside down. The only words you see on the paper are, "You are home," with a web address underneath it. What could this clue possibly mean? This was a mystery that a very famous Uranus in the third house native wanted you to solve. What's up, my buttercups? We are doing a series of Uranus throughout the houses, and oh my goodness, my little creative thinking Uranus in the third house natives. You guys have such a unique way of thinking and such an unconventional way of presenting your thoughts and ideas that it absolutely intrigues others. But it also leaves a lasting impact. Just like the cryptic clue left in the newspapers all around the world. Y'all are the ones that have the brain that is kind of like an internet browser and has 47 different tabs open at any time. You can really have a restless mind with this placement and just always be thinking of a lot of different things. Your mind is able to make these fabulous connections that others are not able to do. And the thing that fascinates me the most about someone who has their Uranus in their third house is how original they are with the way that they think. I love learning their perspective on different topics because they usually just have this unique and one-of-a-kind point of view on something. You can learn so much from these people. And my little Sagittarius self just adores this. Just like the newspaper clue. So once you found this puzzling drawing in the paper, the next logical step was to go to the website listed in the ad to see the answer to the drawing. But when you went to the website, all you found was a door. Now, when you would hover your mouse over the door, it would slightly open, revealing new objects every single day, just keeping people coming back for more, trying to piece together what this all could mean. So the turning point to solving this mystery actually came about when this Uranus in the third house man tweeted and put on his Instagram, "You are home." It was only after that that the door fully opened on the website to show Harry Styles' brand new album cover and art, and revealing that he was releasing a brand new album called You Are Home. I love Uranus in the third house people so much. Instead of just announcing his album like every other celebrity, he dared to be different, presenting his work in such a unique and unconventional way. It was even a little radical to do something like this at the time. Are you seeing how this energy works? People with this placement can have these sudden hits of inspiration that just hit them seemingly out of nowhere. So they may even carry a notepad or have their notes in their phone just totally filled up with all of these sudden revelations. Kendrick Lamar has this placement, and he used to have all kinds of notebooks as a child just filled with poetry and lyrics. And tell me, if you have this placement, do you think of things in such an uncommon way that you've heard people say, "Well, I've never really thought about it like that before"? Let's go back to childhood and see what caused someone with this placement to think radically different than most people. Now, wherever your Uranus is in your chart is where you were taught to conform, but it just doesn't work for you. You try to conform and end up feeling super restricted, and this causes you to eventually rebel and break free of the mold that society has for this specific thing. Now, the thing that you break free from depends on the sign in the house that your Uranus is in. And part of what the third house deals with are things like communication and your thinking. So it's very possible with this placement to have viewpoints about different things that differ from your parents or your siblings. You may differ in your views on religion or philosophy or the meaning of life. Now, these children may have very well started off in a traditional school. And when I say a traditional school, I mean a school that expected everyone to learn the exact same way. So maybe a school that focuses on rote learning. So basically what that means is a teacher just repeats information over and over and over again until it's remembered. And then the information is just regurgitated up for a test and then rinse and repeat for the next topic. Yeah, that doesn't really work for a kid with Uranus in their third house. These are the kids that think outside the box. So they are quite naturally drawn to books or speeches or presentations that present a different perspective to things that are normally accepted. And these are the kids who don't necessarily see the point in learning useless information that they never will use again. They have to make a connection to the bigger picture when they learn things. You can see these natives getting bored when they do not care about or can't make a connection to a specific lesson. Now, they do have an uncanny ability to connect the dots between things, physical and metaphysical things. That's why they are able to have such thought-provoking opinions on different things. School could have turned out in a lot of different ways for this native, really depending on the other aspects that are in their chart. So they could have been a shy child because they were learning their place in this world and how to gain confidence to share their truths. And also because their thoughts may have taken up a lot of energy, not leaving a lot of energy left to talk about meaningless things with other people. These are the children who could have excelled at school because Aquarius is the ruler of Uranus. And Aquarians almost seem like they're from the future. So someone with their Uranus in the third house could think in future terms and be ahead of the ball game, making school an ease. They could have easily also gotten bored because they excelled so effortlessly. They can also be the child that rebels and acts out if they are not connected to the lesson that is being taught. Uranus is also the planet that really doesn't trust authority figures, so it is entirely possible that the child feels like the teacher is just reading from a book, doing what they're told to do, and not questioning anything. So the child rebels and ends up teaching themselves things about the things that they want to learn about. These natives have a tremendous curiosity. They can love things like science, engineering, or figuring out how things work. It can also manifest where the child thinks in ways that are not of this world. And the way that the person does think just doesn't fit the mold of what a traditional public school requires. There's not a lot of creative thinking invited in public schools. And this native thinks creatively and in the future. So teachers could dismiss things that the student says as false, when really the student is just ahead of their time. And when everyone else in this world catches up, they will see the student was right the whole entire time. And one frustrating thing about this placement is a child can receive a label of having a learning disability. Not because they actually have a learning disability, but rather because their thoughts and ideas rebel against the status quo. I mean, Albert Einstein had this placement and people thought he had a learning disability. But look, he outsmarted us all. It just took time for society to catch up to his way of thinking. And now look, his way of thinking is taught in schools. These are also the children that can ask some very thought-provoking questions that teachers can't always answer. They can naturally question what others accept as true because they are such free thinkers. This can intimidate some of their teachers or maybe even aggravate some of their teachers because they don't have the answers. Have you ever experienced anything like this, my little Uranus in the third house native? In fact, our little friend Albert Einstein actually said, "It is, in fact, nothing short of a miracle that the modern methods of instruction have not yet entirely strangled the holy curiosity out of inquiry." How about them apples? You know, the third house deals with things like short distance travel, and these natives can travel to different realms with their thoughts, higher and lower realms. They may get their knowledge through mystical connections or their intuition rather than traditional methods, especially if this native also has Neptune right beside their Uranus. And that can be really hard to explain to someone else, but that does not mean you have a learning disability. Really, what it means is the student doesn't have the proper environment to thrive. There isn't anything wrong with the child, they just think differently, and it's not being cultivated properly. Because the ones in charge of cultivating the child's mind don't have the proper nutrients to allow the free creative thinking to thrive. So I slap a learning disability label on the child because it's easier. Now, also one thing I've noticed when reading charts is, the ninth house is opposite the third house. And the ninth house deals with things like religion, philosophy, and higher learning. So these children can sometimes go to a religious school when they're being brought up. Maybe a Christian school or a Hebrew school or a Catholic school where everything is about conformity. These are also the students who can observe and notice that preachers or teachers don't practice what they preach. Which could lead to that mistrust in authority figures and their rebellion to free thinking. Now, these are also the natives that could somehow have an unorthodox education when growing up. So they may have had a tutor to teach them instead of actually being in a physical school. And they actually may have had a tutor to help elevate them to a higher level of learning if they really enjoyed something, or to help get them caught up to the rest of the class in this 3D world. They could have attended things like boarding schools or Montessori schools or been homeschooled. However they received their education, I can tell you one thing. They are usually quite gifted in at least one area. These are also the natives that may have had to abruptly leave school or drop out of school. Celine Dion has this placement, and she had to drop out of high school to pursue her passion instead of just staying to learn these meaningless things that were not going to help her. And one of my most favorite things with Uranus is it does make you different. And while that is quite nice as an adult because it sets you apart, it's tough on a child. So you may have been bullied for being different if you have this placement. Throughout life, these natives will have ups and downs with their relationship to communication. I can tell you right now, one thing Uranus does not like is consistency. It's very possible for someone with this placement to have an opinion on a specific topic and go to share that point of view only to be met with resistance by others, even though these are the truth tellers of the zodiac. They look at the bigger picture using their innovative mind. They study systems and inherently know what works and doesn't work in that system. And they may have scattered or erratic thoughts and have those 47 tabs open in their brain. After all, they do like learning about a variety of things. But let me tell you, by the time they are ready to speak on a specific topic, believe me, they know what they're talking about, no matter how unconventional it may seem to be. Sometimes they can feel misunderstood because they do have such a radical or eccentric way of presenting their ideas, and others may resist the knowledge that they're trying to share. These natives may even feel like an alien because no one understands the truth that they are speaking, and that can be so frustrating. These natives can have revolutionary ideas for the time period that they live in, and others just aren't able to envision the future like they are. I can't even imagine how hard it is to have visions of the future and put it in today's terms. I mean, that has to be hard. Just think of George Washington trying to explain to Thomas Jefferson about taking a selfie on Snapchat and sending it to your friend over the internet on your cell phone, and the person receiving the snap instantly. No waiting period at all. He would seem crazy at the time for thinking and talking about things like that. But here we are in 2025, and we understand effortlessly. So I could totally understand how someone with Uranus in their third house may find it hard to express themselves and their knowledge and their wisdom that they obtain, especially if they obtain the information metaphysically. Sometimes you find that a person with this placement tries to communicate their truths in a language that is different than their native tongue, so it gets misunderstood as well. This is all done to teach the native how to be authentic in what they hold as truth and not to care what other people think about them for thinking or speaking or writing or being different from the mold that everyone else fits in. Now, I will say Uranus rules over the nervous system. So if you have this placement, it will be natural for you to get nervous communicating your ideas with others at least once in your life until you get comfortable. But over time and with some age and some experiences under your belt, you will care a lot less about what other people think. You will eventually feel enough restriction that it will cause you to rebel and feel the need to share your ideas no matter what the cost. You may lose people because you have viewpoints that shock them or that are controversial or seem out of this world. But just realize you have a very unique gift in thinking. You can create a spark within others to think different. You can create a lot of social progress with your wisdom. Uranus is ruled by Aquarius, and Aquarius is a humanitarian sign. These natives can have original ways to present their viewpoints to others. In 1973, a petite 26-year-old Apache woman named Sasheen Littlefeather stood up on a stage in front of the whole world in her buckskin dress and moccasins to refuse an Academy Award for Marlon Brando for his role in The Godfather. He declined the award in protest to Hollywood's mistreatment of Native Americans and how they portray them, and to also show his support in the standoff at Wounded Knee. At the time, this was an incredible way to present his viewpoints on the treatment of Native Americans. Although he was met with resistance with his way of thinking because others couldn't imagine a future where everyone was created equal. And you guessed it, Marlon Brando has his Uranus in his third house. Just look at Kendrick Lamar's halftime show during the Super Bowl and all of this symbolism that was used to create a message. The beautiful thing about someone with Uranus in their third house is over time they become more secure in being different, and they can join a cause and use their words to gain followers. Even though their cause may be radically different than how society operates at the present moment. Nelson Mandela had his Uranus in his third house. He knew a great leader was someone who was able to transform his environment into his ally with his words and make ethical changes that are needed in society. Now, I will say some Uranus in the third house natives can stir up some controversy or drama with their words. Like, for instance, Miss Julia Roberts. So back in the early 2000s, Julia met a man on set named Danny, and they had instant chemistry with one another. The only problem was Julia was dating another man and Danny was married. So the two ended up deciding to be together. So Danny decided he was going to divorce his wife Vera, which of course this came to a shock to Vera because it was a happy marriage. And the divorce was not an easy one. Well, Miss Julia, at the time, who was just on top of her fame and just, on top of the world, she decides to go out where she knows the paparazzi will see her. And she created this little handwritten shirt that says aloe vera, but it says aloe vera, which is a play on words of aloe vera, if that makes sense. It was a jab at Vera not wanting to get the divorce and not making the divorce an easy process for Danny. So you can see their words are powerful enough to cause controversy in good ways and in bad. Another thing this placement is great for is for someone to build systems where other people communicate. Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, has this placement. And it can also be a placement where someone can communicate via technology. So maybe they create groups of like-minded people on the internet. So maybe a Facebook group about a social issue, or a group that believes in metaphysical things, or maybe even your own YouTube where you were able to find like-minded people. You are here to change people with your words in some type of fashion with this placement, whether it's your speaking, your writing, or just your creativity. And one powerful thing about this placement that I love, love, love is no matter what restrictions someone tries to place on them, no matter what privileges get removed from this person's life, these natives will never, ever, ever lose their freedom of their thoughts. No one will ever be able to take their thoughts away from them. Look at Nelson Mandela. He was literally thrown in jail for his beliefs. But no matter what authority figure tried to take away his physical freedom, he was always still able to remain free in his thoughts. And that is powerful. I will say it is possible for someone with this placement to need alone time with their thoughts and ideas to kind of process and connect them all within their mind. So actually being in jail made Nelson Mandela more powerful because he was able to gather and process his thoughts that were true to him and make them stronger. He was even quoted as saying, "The cell is an ideal place to know yourself." People tend to measure themselves by external accomplishments, but jail allows a person to focus on the internal ones, such as honesty, sincerity, simplicity, humility, generosity, and an absence of variety. You learn to look into yourself. One of my favorite things about Uranus is its authenticity. So you know when someone with Uranus in their third house speaks, it's authentic and not fake. You also may find they have some spontaneous conversations with people. So maybe while waiting in line for something, they strike up a conversation, or they see someone with a shirt about a band that they like. So they randomly talk about it to the person. These are the people that don't believe in hierarchy. So they really aren't the ones to think that they are better than other people and not to talk to them. They will talk to anyone if they are in the right mood. And if you're lucky enough to know someone with Uranus in their third house, then you have a friend that you can talk to any time of the day or night. These are the friends that you can call up at 3 a.m. to discuss things with. Or they may be the ones calling you up at random hours because they just thought of something. These natives can also communicate with people in ways that seem advanced for the time period. So they could have been one of the first of their friends to have a cell phone or an AOL Instant Messenger, or maybe an app on their phone that everyone else uses later on. These days, they may even know how to communicate telepathically with others. They just have this beautiful, innovative spirit that is constantly seeking new ways to communicate. They may even be able to channel higher entities with this placement. Now, earlier, I did speak about the third house being the house of short distant trips. So it's possible these natives find themselves having to travel with little to no time to plan. So something just suddenly comes up out of nowhere. Maybe a friend can't go to a concert and they give you the tickets to go out of town. Or maybe a sudden death occurs and you have to travel with little notice. Maybe just spur of the moment you decide to drive to a new city. Or maybe your job takes you to different places for work. I don't know. It can manifest in a lot of different ways. If you have this placement, what kind of spur of the moment things have happened that caused you to have to take a small trip abruptly? You can also find that if they have to take the same trip over and over, let's say to work or something, they change it up from time to time on a whim. So that they don't have the trip just be so mundane and boring. They like changing things up. I mean, they did come here to disrupt the thoughts of all of those around them and to question what others hold as true, which I think is a beautiful thing. I love you, my original little Uranus in the third house natives. Mwah.